Hey guys, Josh here from Marques Flooring. Thanks for joining us. This is our 11th episode of Third Thursday training, and for today's training we're going to be showing you live how to wire brush a timber floor to give you that beautiful hand scraped finish. And we're also going to show you another accessory that goes on the same machine that's going to allow you to sand older floors a lot faster. To do this, we've got the experts from Frank Sanding Machines, which is Richard. So I'll hand it over to Richard and he'll take us through the demonstration.
Fantastic. Thanks, Josh. Okay guys, so the Frank Spider is a lot like a lot of the other rotary machines out here. I'll show you a couple of things different about the Frank Spider before we get started, because one of the questions we get often is, why is the Frank Spider more expensive than everything else? And there is some really good reasons for that. So there's some really good hard rotary sanders out there, but there's two things that the Frank Spider has that no other machine has. So firstly, with the hard rotaries, as we know, good multi-disc and planetary or free spinning. But one thing that the Frank Spider has that no other machine has is a multiple speed and variable speed from 450 RPM all the way through to 450 RPM. So what that effectively means is this machine is far more complete than any other on the market. So if I want to buff on an oil, I need it really slow so that I'm not going to splatter oil or stain all over my floors. I can bring it all the way down to 50. If I want to do level sanding, really hard stuff to get the floor nice and flat, then I can push it up to around about 350, 400 revs. So there's a lot of flexibility there. This will take away around about 50% of the sanding you need to do with your big machine, about 70% of your edging because it gets really close. You don't need a buffer and you don't need a soft rotary sander. So it's a very, very complete machine. So I'll just show you there very quickly without anything on. See the machine there? So nice and slow. Then all the way, even while I'm sanding I can adjust the speed up really nice and fast. So the technology in having that variable speed in this electronic box, that's the reason it's more expensive. So it's not a great brand that's trying to rip you off, it's a great brand that's got a product that's far superior. The other thing that this machine has that no other machine does is some machines are planetary driven, so direct drive, so better for hard level sanding, and some are free spinning. Free spinning better for fine sanding to get a smoother finish. This one here, if we look down there, there's a little knob there, and if I've got that knob fully depressed in there, then that's free spinning, great for fine sanding. But when I turn it and click it so it engages with my multi-head system, then I've got the ability to do direct drive. So again, this machine, a little bit more complete. I can go both from level sanding right through to the fine sanding. So what we're going to do today, we've got an oak panel here, as you can see. Here's one we did earlier, because we're like any other really good cooking show. And we're taking an oak panel and we're using the brush set to create this look here, where we put texture in the floor. So what the brushes do is they take out the soft timber to create that texture, and that leaves you with a much more rustic looking floor, and a floor that will really enhance it. Obviously, even though this process is relatively straightforward, it does give you a much more high-end look, so you can certainly charge more to your customers if you're doing this job. You'll also see here we've stained it, and when you stain a brushed floor, that's when you really get the true impact. So it's a pretty simple system on the Spider. We've got 3 sets of brushes. Our first set of brushes is stainless steel. I'll get my trusty assistant Braden to help me. First step we have to do is to wet the floor before we put the stainless steel brushes on there. So while Braden's getting that, it's just behind here, Braden. So with the stainless steel brushes, obviously they generate a fair bit of heat when we're using them. So just by wetting the floor, what we're doing is softening those soft timbers so it's easier to pull them out, and we're making sure that the machine doesn't overheat as well. Don't need to go too liberal, like I just did. And we're going to complete this sanding while there's still moisture in there. So it's not like water popping where you wait for it to dry. We're actually going to start the sanding process whilst there's still a little bit of dampness in that floor. So we start with our pad there, which we click on. Just roll that on, and you'll notice I've got my direct drive engaged. So as I turn round, all three of these discs turn round as well. That means I know it's on, secure and locked. Normally, we would then put our skirt on and start the process, but for a demonstration it's always nice to see the brushes doing their thing. So today we're going to leave that on. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go left to right across the boards, because that's, and then right to left, but across the boards more generally tends to be more effective in digging out in that process. Now we've got the head on, the wheels come off the ground. We've got a bump at the back here, so we bring that down. It doesn't matter what height you are, you can adjust it to the height that you want. So for me, we always want to go just about there into the head. When we turn it on, it's a soft start, which means the green light comes on, there's a delay of about 1 second, and then the machine slowly starts up. Doesn't try and start up at full speed and run away from you, so it gives you a chance. The other thing that we can control, we've got our variable speed here. So with our variable speed, we can start a bit slower and then speed up as we get going. So, green light, and we're off and running. So just get comfortable with your seat. Speed up a little bit there. Now one of the things there, guys, I've got this set a bit high, so it's jumping around a bit. So I'm just going to bring it down and start again. Starting to see those flames pop out. So that's my first pass. I've just done a little section there. So that's really dug out. Now we've got 2 nylon brush sets, one at 46 grit and one at 60 grit. And that's going to really start to clean it up and really start to enhance that grain. So it's pretty simple here. This one comes off. And we've got the plates. These ones are a little bit spiky, so we put the glove on. It's really straightforward. Once there, the nylons aren't so spiky, but we can see there, very simple, click it straight on. Alrighty, so changing your pads, very, very simple part of the process. So then we come back, put this one on. Same thing here. Once it's on and it's engaged. We know that this is locked in place once it's engaged. This multi-head is about 18 kilos, so you do want to make sure it's engaged before you tip your machine up, because if it falls on your floor, you are going to dent it, even if it's grey iron bar. Then when we're putting it up, the other thing we like to do, just keep your shoe behind the wheel, then it doesn't get out of the way for you. And you just wipe the brow, bring it back down, and we're ready to go again. Notice the nylon brushes grab a whole lot less. So this is a much smoother mixture operation. So I'm just taking that up to about 60%. No need to re-wet it, all the wetting's done. To see, it's much more noticeable. So, from 46 now onto the 60 grip. Standing behind, always keeping your hand on the thing. Turn, 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 and we're engaged. Once we're engaged, if you're ever not sure, always check. Holding, foot behind, straight back on again. Straight back down. One of the things I don't know whether you guys noticed, as soon as I stood down I was 2 inches lower and I didn't have control of the machine again because it was that much higher. So having it at the right height is really important. Going to run it a little bit slower this time. And if I'm slowing the speed down, I'm spending a little bit more time to let it grind out. It's one of those things that as you use the machine and you understand the job site and the camera, you work out what works best for that particular job. The other thing we can do, we can use the machine to run in one place today. Two weights or no weight. So again, that impacts on how deep and hard to go. It's also taking out some of the scratches that we create with the same material. So if we have a look there, guys, you've now done, in a relatively short process, 3 crosses, and you feel the texture across there. You've got a beautiful floor that's ready for a stain and coating. Alrighty. I don't think we'll stain and coat that bit today because we did this one earlier to have a look at. But the next thing I'd really like to show you is the diamond segments. So the diamond segments is another attachment, and that's designed to take aluminium oxide coatings off pre-finished floors. So we know one of the biggest headaches that we get sometimes is for us to resand a bamboo floor or a engineered floor, and getting that initial break through the aluminium oxide can be a real pain in the neck. So fortunately, the guys at Frank have come up with a solution. So we've all seen diamond segments for concrete. These are diamond segments specifically for timber flooring. So they come in 2 grits. We've got a 30 grit here today. The one you probably use more often is a 50 grit. Take the coating off and you don't need to take much more off than just the coating. But this one will certainly show the process very quickly as it rips it through. So again, we've got a new pad, so we just clip off the old ones. Now, if I'd been really smart, I would have tapped these into place so that they didn't come loose, but nothing shorter than 1 or 2 of these will come loose while I'm getting ready. Once we start sanding, that won't be an issue, because obviously the force is pushing them out. So again, not very difficult at all to clip that out. So you'll see one we did earlier today, just to show you how it works. But you probably think, oh, that's taken a fair bit of time. You're going to be surprised to see how quickly we can rip the coating off the rest of this one. Nice and engaged, everything's there. And what you might notice with these particular plates is that there's actually a little shock absorber in them as well, so that it doesn't go too tight. But I can show you that a little bit closer up shortly. I'm going to bring this down really low because I'm going to be sanding a whole lot lower. But another good point with this machine, you've got to go under a staircase. You can get this all the way down there. So it really does make your sanding process and your sanding job a whole lot easier. Alrighty, starting at about 50%. As you can see, we have ripped that coating off in about 5 minutes flat, and I don't think that there's a belt sander around that will sand it off that quick. That's the 30 grit, you've got the 50 grit option as well, but if you're ever doing pre-finished anything with an aluminium oxide, this is really going to be a much more efficient way to get that off and to save yourself a heap of time, and potentially on engineered save floors as well, because you've only got 3mm to play with. You don't have to dig in too hard with your big machine. We've left this little box here for a reason. What we'll do is we'll take a quick break, then we'll come back and we'll say, okay, if we were going to put a 40 grit sandpaper on, how will that go on the same substrate? Okay, so we're now going back to our standard plate. Standard plate has the Velcro, and we've already put that exhaust pad on there. So normally that's loose, but we've got it on there already. So the whole purpose of the exhaust pad is it lets hot air escape while you're using the machine to keep it cooler, and it also creates holes when we put the sandpaper on for better suction. So we'll just put these standard plates on. So we've got some 40 grit zirconia papers. most jobs, if you weren't using the big machine, when guys are doing normal standing jobs, there's two ways they look at it. If it's a really uneven floor, they might go one run across with their big belt, or they might go straight onto this machine. If they were going to, if it was a small job, particularly if it's a tight passageway, they go into this, they'd probably start with a 40 or 50 grip, depending on the floor. So we're assuming that we're starting on this floor with a 40 grip zirconia. Generally, we always say, obviously, you start on the highest grip that you can, but the lowest grip that you have to. So we're going to go the second weight. We know the issue with these things sometimes is when it's a bit slippery, it wants to slide around a bit. So if we put a bit more weight, we should be more successful. Guys, we have a look here. That's actually not a bad result for papers. We managed to get it off here, but in terms of the amount of time spent in one area compared to here, this ripped it off probably twice as quick, and it was a lot more thorough. Here we were really only getting one section down the middle. We weren't getting out here to get the success. So it's just the diamond segments are going to be a whole lot more efficient. Do we have any questions?
How do you finish it? But like obviously you really scratched that up.
So that's got a 30 grip. Normally we'd use a 50. We'd then go to our normal paper process. So the whole idea, the benefit of the diamond segments is to get through that coating and then there. So especially if you're on an engineered timber, well, once we get to the timber, we sand our normal process. So we were using 50 diamonds. I'd probably go to a 50 paper, maybe a 60 paper. I'd try a 60 paper, see how that went. The other thing I'd be doing with the diamonds is leaving less weights on there. So you don't want those, you want it scratching, you just don't want it scratching too deep. So the purpose of the diamonds is to get a better grip for you. So to assess every job site as you do, you make sure that I always say, go slower, use less weights, and then build them up, build up your speed, build up your weight, go lower with grip when you need to. Don't start going it too hard, because if you start going too hard, it will take longer to finish the floor. Do you want to have a crack at cleaning it up the rest with the diamonds?
Oh, yeah.
One thing we don't have today, you've got to put your set of plates on, is if you've got your pre-separator. The pre-separator makes a big difference. So that's collecting sort of 95% of your dust before it goes in there. And we actually started with 30 litre ones, then we've now got 50 litres, and I've had two customers that had both 30 and 50, and they've both said, no, the 50 litre pre-separator makes a massive difference. They have come out with this as an additional part, and this literally landed about 2 hours before I left Perth the other day, so I haven't even looked into it that closely. But this is now a skirt that can go onto your ring and then get taped to your machine. Seals it off better, and that's going to improve the dust extraction even further again.
thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks to Richard for coming down and showing us this demonstration on both these good products. That concludes our episode 11 of Third Thursday Training, and it's actually our last one for the year. So we're actually going to be looking at some new topics. So we will kick off next year in 2020 with some new things, the new topics that we'll be able to show you guys on how to use. Yeah, so thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for watching all the videos, and if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you do. We'll see you in 2020. Thank you.
And buy a Frank Spider.